shop style scones because it pairs naturally with the same spices typically used in pumpkin pie. And you know about pumpkin in the autumn, pumpkin scones, pumpkin cappuccinos, pumpkin lattes, bestsellers everywhere. Spelt is a lighter flour than whole wheat, so it can completely replace all-purpose flour without making the scones dense. We need 2 cups of spelt flour, measured same way you measure regular flour, dip and level. So 2 cups, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 3/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon, 3/4 of a teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/3 of a cup of granulated sugar. You could use brown sugar if you like, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and, oh, my favorite, nutmeg. And if you have the chance, always grate your own nutmeg. It's just so much more aromatic, so much brighter than nutmeg that comes already ground in a spice bottle. Be very careful. I like to use this grater for grating my nutmegs. Nutmegs are really, really hard, and about 1/2 of a nutmeg will generate the right amount of nutmeg for this particular recipe. And did you know that nutmeg is the only spice that actually is 2 spices, nutmeg and mace? When it dries, nutmeg is the seed kernel inside the fruit, and then it has this beautiful net-like covering that you'd remove, and that's the mace. It's so delicious. It's a completely other taste. So here you can mix your dry ingredients. Add your butter. This is 1 stick of butter that is grated and then frozen. And this eliminates the need for any pastry cutter or food processor. It probably takes about the same amount of time as a food processor for this step. And mix this in. Now you might be asking, what is spelt? It's an ancient non-hybridized relative of wheat, and it has a sweet, spice-like flavor. It produces baked goods with a lighter, more tender crumb than those made with whole wheat flour. And it's easier to digest for many people than wheat, but it's not gluten-free because it is related to the wheat berry, but it's very healthy. So here we have 1/3 of a cup of pumpkin puree. Mix that with 2 tablespoons of heavy cream and 1 large egg. This is your wet ingredients. Mix that together. So add that to the dry ingredients. It's a kind of a dry mix, but it will come together. And I can see all those little curls of butter. You don't want to get this warm because you want really light and flaky scones. You could also make these ahead of time and just put the sheet pan covered in the freezer and bake them when you're ready to serve. So if you're having a big brunch on Sunday, you can make these on Saturday and don't bake them until right before the brunch. Okay, so now turn this out. And pat this into a 6-inch round. So once you form this into a 6-inch round, cut it into 8 equal segments. And you can use a bench scraper to do this. Works very well. So you cut it first into quarters. If you want bigger scones, you can do 6, but these are rich scones, and this is plenty large enough. And now just spread these out on your parchment paper for baking, and then brush the tops with heavy cream. This adds a nice additional texture to the top of the scone. And get these right into a preheated 375-degree oven and bake for approximately 20 minutes. So here are the scones. Don't they look good? Well, a simple glaze with some maple syrup will certainly fancy these scones up. So a tablespoon of melted butter, a 1/2 cup of confectioner's sugar, 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. Maple and pumpkin go so well together. 3 tablespoons, and a pinch of salt just to brighten up the flavor. Just mix it until it's smooth, and just spoon this right on top of your scone. It'll drip down the sides a little bit, but all it's doing is adding delicious flavor and a lovely contrast to the pumpkin. Make enough of these, and they can be served for breakfast, as a snack, with an afternoon coffee, but they're also really good with hot apple cider, a perfect coffee shop.